Welcome to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Welcome into World Soccer Talk. World Soccer Talks Soccer Morning. That's what I meant to say. It's Wednesday, middle of the week, hump day. Got to get over the hump to get downhill, something, weekend coming. Lots to talk about on a Wednesday. Very excited for this show. Andrew Gibney will join us today to talk a little French football. We'll talk the women of France, the favorites perhaps in the Women's World Cup in Canada. They opened up their tournament yesterday with a 1-0 win over the English. We'll talk to Andrew about that performance. Perhaps go back to France's loss in a friendly to Belgium 4-3 a couple days ago. Get Andrew's thoughts there because remember, France headed towards hosting Euro 2016, and they have a lot of talent, and they may be favorites in that tournament, but that also means that they got to get their preparations together because they're not they don't have to qualify. Those issues are not there for them. Lots of headlines this morning as well. Let's jump right in before we get to Andrew. The U.S. U20s have advanced to the quarterfinals of the U20 World Cup in New Zealand with a 1-0 win over Colombia last night, early this morning. Rubin, or however you say his name, because I'm not sure exactly how to say his name, with the goal. Highlights are out there if you can find them. There's a shot. Looks like it hit a Colombia player's hand to me. Comes off, and Rubin just doesn't make a mistake. Puts it in the back of the net. The United States held off Colombia on the other end, including Zach Steffen stopping a penalty from the Colombians, which to me was a good save, not necessarily a bad penalty, because that's always the balance. How good was the penalty versus how good was the save? I think this was a good save by Zach Steffen to keep the United States in that game, give them opportunity to score and win. Bradford Jamieson, the fourth, went out of that game with an injury. A head contusion was mentioned. I need to get an update on Bradford Jamison's condition. Believe he was taken to a hospital. Hopefully everything's okay with the young LA Galaxy star. In results from the Women's World Cup, I mentioned France beating England 1-0. You also had Colombia scoring late to deny Mexico their first ever Women's World Cup win. 1-1 was the scoreline there. Spain won, Costa Rica won in a battle of debutantes. Both of those countries in the tournament for the first time. That is in Group E. Also in Group E, Brazil 2, South Korea 0. Good performance from the Brazilians. Watched some of that game myself. Wasn't just Marta. It was an all-around performance by the Brazilians. So the Women's World Cup chugs along. Today's matches include Germany, Norway, China, Netherlands, Cote d'Ivoire. Oh, wait, that's not today. That's tomorrow. No games today. No games on Wednesday. So we take a break. Those are games tomorrow. We'll take a look at those when they come around. Interesting news out of the NASL world. North American Soccer League has filed a suit in New York Supreme Court against the owner of an Oklahoma City professional soccer franchise. Remember, NASL was supposed to go into Oklahoma. We were going to see an NASL USL battleground because the OKC Energy are in Oklahoma City as well. That did not happen, and now the NASL is suing for more than $2 million for an alleged breach of contract related to that withdrawal. NASL suffered extensive damages as a result of the withdrawal, says the complaint. So it's not all hunky-dory in expansion land for NASL, in addition to everything else that's going on with them in regards to Aaron Davidson and traffic. Lionel Messi will face trial over his tax fraud case in Spain. You may not remember this, but Lionel Messi was accused of tax fraud in Spain. $4.1 million euro tax fraud. A Barcelona court has turned down an appeal made by his lawyers aimed at having him avoid to sit in trial. The court felt there was evidence that the Barcelona forward benefited from a network of companies that allowed him to defraud the Spanish tax agency of 3.4 million euros in income tax, regardless of whether he had any knowledge of the structures in place, because this was his excuse. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know this was going on. Now, some of this goes back to, I believe, his father. His father also denies allegations that this was a tax fraud. They are suspected of using companies in Belize and Uruguay to sell the rights to use Messi's image, thereby circumventing tax obligations in Spain. This goes back to 2007, 2008, and 2009. In August, Jorge Messi made a payment of 5 million euros to the tax authorities. Lionel Messi has previously stated that he and his father have never committed any infringement. We have always fulfilled our tax obligations. So there you go. Tax cheat, Lionel Messi? We'll find out. And certainly we'll find out whether he's convicted of being a tax cheat. Saw this morning. What's going on? What's going on with this? The Columbus Crew report out that Adidas is going to change the color of the Columbus Crew primary uniform. The iconic gold kit will no longer be the primary. Will not even be the crew won't have a gold uniform. This is from Massive Report over at SB Nation. Massive Report has learned that the black and gold will go forward in name only as the current secondary kit. The black jersey that made its return this year will officially become the primary, and the second jersey will be white, featuring quote-unquote funky colors. The source with knowledge of the new jersey alluded to the catalog in a 2016 Adidas catalog as reference for the funky colors, meaning the jersey will likely feature different shades of blue, yellow, red, and white that adorn the seal of Columbus. 2016 will therefore be the first time since 1999 that Crew SC has not had a gold kit. Come on, that's who the Crew are. Not a big fan of that. 2026 World Cup bidding has been postponed in light of the FIFA corruption scandal. FIFA Secretary Jerome Valk said Wednesday that FIFA would postpone the bidding process for 2026 as the investigations continue. Now, remember, we have the FBI investigations, we have the indictments, we have those FIFA officials arrested in Zurich, and we also have a 2018 and 2022 investigation being conducted by Swiss authorities, as well as those bidding processes being part of the FBI investigation. Clearly, FIFA does not want to have all of that come to bear on the 2026 bidding. Now, the question for us sitting here is whether or not this helps the United States, because the thinking will be that the further away from those FBI moves and the indictments we can get, the better it is for perception of the United States, and the better it is for a potential World Cup to come to the United States. World Soccer's governing body is expected to allocate the 2026 tournament to a host nation in 2017. Valky said it's nonsense to start any bidding process for the time being. So there you go. A little bit of a wait on that. I got a couple of other things. We got USA Germany today, and I want to read this quote from Yogi Love ahead of the game. This is from FoxSoccer.com. Kyle McCarthy, who is in Germany. I watched the Netherlands-USA game. I have to say I was highly impressed by the sheer speed, the intensity, and the strength of character that the U.S. national team showed. Also, tactically, they played at a high level. From purely a footballing quality point of view, I think the game against the Netherlands was fantastic to watch. The team has come on in leaps and bounds, even at the World Cup in Brazil. They left Portugal behind them. They left Ghana behind them. They exited from the World Cup in extra time. Tactically speaking, I think the U.S. national team were at a very high level. They showed an incredible intensity and dynamism on the pitch. Do you agree with Mr. Love? I'm not sure that I do. We'll leave that question to the side and talk to Andrew Gibney about some French topics when we come back. Soccer Morning, WorldSoccerTalk.com.
Face in the crowd, you're talking too loud, but I can't hear you calling.
This Friday, the U.S. women's team plays Sweden in a game that'll be televised live on free-to-air U.S. television in prime time. It'll arguably be the most competitive game from the first round of the tournament, and I'll be sharing my thoughts and opinions about the clash live on Rabble.tv. You can join in too by posting your questions or observations in the comments section. Plus, I'll be talking you through the game as we watch two of the best teams in the world compete on the field. With Rabble.tv, the concept is simple. All you have to do is tune into the broadcast on TV, press the mute button, and then head over to Rabble.tv to listen to me sharing my analysis. And if you have an iPhone, install the Rabble TV app today and add a comment to the broadcast message board. Then listen live via the app on Friday. So mark your calendars for Friday, June 12th at 7:45 Eastern. Celebrate the U.S. game against Sweden by cheering on the red, white, and blue with me live on Rabble.tv.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
Here we go. Let's talk a little France, little French football with Andrew Gibney from French Football Weekly. Should be checking that out, especially as the. Is it fair, Andrew, to call the French women the top favorites, or is Germany the favorite for you?
I think Germany are still the favourites. France, although number 3 in the world, they've not quite got that sort of success in the women's game that Germany have and USA have to really be in that next bracket. I think they're still just below.
Certainly this tournament, and if they could win this tournament or they could make a final, or a strong showing for this team would put them into that upper echelon, I would imagine. This is the only team believed to beat the United States in this calendar year. This is a team that opened up their campaign at the Women's World Cup in Canada with a 1-0 win over England yesterday. Let's go to that game specifically, Andrew. What did you make of the French performance? The margin is small, but I believe that was France's game for the most part.
Yeah, it was France's game, and it had a lot to do with the way England set up as well. They were set up to be very defensive, kind of the same they were against Canada. So 2 banks of 4. That was an extra player in the midfield, was trying to frustrate. And France sort of knew that was coming. He didn't get the best out of Elodie Thomas on the right with her pace because of the way England played. And to be fair to England, it only took one mistake from Bassett, Le Sommer with an absolutely beautiful strike. And that's the only time France really troubled. So they'll feel their way into the tournament. They've got 2 easier games coming up. And I think you'll see Colombia and Mexico be a bit less disciplined than England and see a bit more football prowess from the French, I think. Yeah,
certainly the English, not only familiar with the French, but certainly, as you said, more likely to set up with a tactical discipline and that's nothing against Mexico or Colombia, who certainly have talented players. And maybe that's, I mean, the World Cups throw up shockers all the time. Andrew, is there anything that France needs to watch out for with a couple of teams that are certainly going to have more flair than England? And I'm not being stereotypical. I've seen those teams play. They do have some flair. Is that going to cause any sort of problem for France?
I think France look fairly solid at the back. The full backs possibly weaker than you got Wendy Renard in the middle, who go mopping up all day. It's just, I think when you get to the latter stages, which France will hope to, they're possibly going to face Germany in the quarterfinals if it all goes to plan. There could be shocks, and that's where they're going to get really, really tested. Can they break down the Germans? Can they stop the Germans? And have they got that bit of class to go all the way? And look, I watched the Colombia-Mexico game yesterday, and that they're unpredictable and exciting, and the sort of more dynamic than England were. So they're definitely going to ask questions whether they've got the quality to let England stop the France attack. I don't think so.
Group F, the prevailing wisdom is that France will top the group, and that's going to form so far, and that England may come in second. Now, of course, we know this 24-team tournament, 4 out of 6 third-place teams make it through. When you look at the group overall and consider where England is, would you expect them to come in second and to be better than both Colombia and Mexico?
Yeah, I mean, that's England's hope. When they're talking about they're there to win the tournament, but I think realistically they know that they need to get to knockout stages. They've never won a knockout match before. That has to be England's chances. They played Mexico 4 years ago, finished 1 each. They play again on Saturday, and this will be a real test to see where this England team is. Have they progressed? Is the WSL League helping bring them forward? And they need to go and take that game to Mexico and really show that they're not a defensive team, that they have got flair and they have got talent going forward. And looking at both games, Mexico will cause problems. I think England, from knowing the players, from watching here, I think they'll have enough to win that game, and then that will pretty much secure second place.
Andrew, this is a part of the discussion of women's football that it's sad that we have to have it, but it comes with the territory, and it certainly comes with. I'm used to it as an American with the sport itself needing to be promoted and pushed forward. How are the French women viewed in France? What's the excitement level over the World Cup there? And if they were to win this, what would that mean for women's football in France?
In France, I think they're definitely up there. They get a lot of attention. They're getting a lot of press. If you look at sort of my Twitter's really sort of equal between English and French stuff, and there was a lot of support for the French, maybe a little bit more than the English were getting. I think it would do huge. I mean, the league's fairly big, as in some of the professional teams that get to the Champions League. PSG were in the final, and I think just having that spotlight on them getting all the way would do so much for the league itself, do much for the teams and the help. Guingamp have recently sort of taken over the women's side, linked with the men's, and they're pushing forward to get that interest from other teams thinking there's something in this. Lana Dickinman, who at Leon, she said that it's not just about making money, it's about showing that you're supporting it, and that's what they need to get, is that's the support from other teams and advertising, and really big it up to get near the level of America, who's probably one of the best at supporting it.
And even here, I mean, a professional league here has got, obviously we're on a third try with NWSL, and it goes to show you how difficult it is and the barriers that need to be broken down. Now, the Veronica Boquetti from Spain specifically talked about, where, obviously that's their first time in the tournament, not a lot of expectations, but some talent there. She's a very talented player. She talked about the importance of putting in a good showing for Spain so that there can be some recognition back at home. Have any of the French players spoken about that specifically, being at this World Cup, making a run? Obviously, we know France is talented, but it's a matter of putting the results on the field so that they'll be talking about them back at home.
Yeah, I've not seen anything like the way that Boquetti came out there, sort of striving for equality, aren't they, to get. And you can see Spain are still relatives as an emerging nation's first World Cup. Even the men's teams, only recently they've had success as well. And yeah, France, I think, because it is a bit more publicised with Lyon and PSG doing so well, and so PSG recently, with the money involved, doing well in the Champions League, they're not quite as far back as Spain are. But I think that France are really positive and think that they have got a chance to go all the way. The draw doesn't favour them much at all. But yeah, it would do wonders to get. The further they go, the more the media is going to sort of get on the back of it. We're right at the early stages now, and the French are very much like that. The same with Ligue 1. If you're not winning, sort of no one cares. Yeah. So if they can get all the way to the semis, you'll probably see the media pick up and take it further on, which would be great.
Let me flip over to the French men, because they've got a big tournament coming up next year. They're hosting Euro 2016, most recent result, a friendly loss to Belgium 4-3. I didn't get to see any of that game. Andrew, I imagine that was just a wild affair. Certainly the Belgians have a lot of talent. The Belgians, have a lot of talent. With the French being one of the more fancied teams heading into next summer and not having to qualify, does it make the process more difficult?
Yeah, it's trying to see where they are in terms of, it's the end of the season, so players are sort of looking towards a holiday, but so are the Belgian players, and they've got a qualifier coming up, so you can't say that it was a meaningless game for them. It should have been more meaningless for Belgium than it was for France. And they're the one that showed the effort and desire. Deschamps questioning the sort of the attitude of his players that played. And it's a bit of a backward step. And there's sort of two trains of thought. Do you play the same team and say to them, show me that was a one-off, show me you're still the players that are going to take us far in the Euros, or do you then try other players in those positions to give them a chance? It's really one that sort of is splitting the fence at the moment, and it's difficult because international friendlies are difficult to get excited for, but when it's always friendlies, it's hard. It must be hard for the players to prepare that, having that competitive spirit not there. How do you judge where your progression are, how your preparation's going? I find it difficult. I think the players must find it difficult as well.
And what is the build-up like? I mean, what is the excitement level? It's a year away, but I mean, how much pressure is going to be put on that team just to win the tournament? I mean, there's going to be no other result that's going to do.
I think on the face of it, yeah, I think they have to. And I think getting to the semi-finals with the strength of teams in Europe, I think they have to get to the semi-finals. They showed in the World Cup that they are moving forward and moving away from 2010 and that debacle. That they are a new team for a new spirit. Deschamps got them playing well and a really nice attitude to them. Semi-finals for me, trying to be realistic is what they should be aiming for, and then it depends who you get and how you're playing and what happens. I mean, France will get the excitement's building. I was in Lille a few weeks ago and people are starting to talk about it because they've got 4 or 5 games at Lens as well, with the stadiums coming along. And it's as all these stadiums start to get completed for next summer, that's when you see the excitement sort of build city to city. Bordeaux opened their new stadium on the final weekend, and you can see the excitement building there. And Lyon, that opens in January. And that's what's going to, I think, you'll see it slowly building up. And yeah, it's going to be an amazing tournament and an amazing sort of country, and really looking forward to it.
They got a friendly coming up against Albania, and obviously, again, difficult for a team that's not required to qualify to go through those preparations a year out from the Euros. And Andrew, the FIFA scandal is impacting obviously FIFA. Platini is awfully vocal on those issues as the head of UEFA. He's in an incredibly powerful position. How much of any, what is the impact, or what is the buzz around Euro 2016 and certainly Platini in relation to the FIFA scandal? I mean, it's not going to impact the tournament because that's a UEFA tournament, but these things are all connected, and these people have been operating in these same circles for years. Yeah,
the France reaction was a little bit different from the one in the UK. I think L'Equipe had it at the sort of bottom right of page 14, rather than the front page. The English press were going at. I think the French are kind of more, they're looking towards the football and sort of the tournament itself rather than all the politics that go around it. The Platini thing's interesting because he probably would be one of the front runners to take over, but is he really going to want to sort of move away from UEFA when it's his tournament coming up?
Right.
This is his baby. This is his European Championships, and I don't think he'll be in the running when it comes down to electing a president. I think he'll stick with UEFA. I think he's safer criticising from afar rather than being the man in the spotlight.
Has there been any other discussion about his connections to the Qataris, for example? I mean, when Sepp Blatter announces a quote-unquote resignation, which I don't really think is a resignation,
no.
Platini's main name comes up because he's the obvious successor. And I just want people to remember his connection. I'm not saying that necessarily he's corrupt, but he did vote for the Qataris. He was clearly a supporter of the Qataris. We heard about Sarkozy having dinner with Platini and instructing him to support the Qataris because of the investment in France. Is any of that news at this point?
It's bubbling under. People, if you look into it, there's so many links. There's France selling jets to Qatar. You've got Platini's son has a very high-powered job at Al Jazeera, who own beIN Sport, which covers Ligue 1, who obviously, and then Qatari involvement at PSG, and beIN Sport is the main sponsor of the PSG women's team. There's a lot of connections. So France will be the last country to rock the boat, I think, on that one.
Let's briefly here before I move on to some league topics. The national team, and I don't know if you've had a chance to even look at the roster. that Deschamps called in for Belgium and Albania. But the reason that France is highly touted and going into the Euros as host will have a lot of buzz around them is because of the young talent. Beyond, I mean, we can certainly talk about Paul Pogba if you would like to, but beyond Pogba, where is the strength coming through with this French team?
Oh, there's so much talent. There's such a nice group of sort of between 22 to 26. Pogba obviously is the one that has been talked about to death. We don't have to cover that again. You've got Jeffrey Kondogbia, who moved to Monaco two seasons ago, and this season he really came on, especially in the Champions League. He said the goal against Arsenal, and his overall performances were really, really good. It's just whether he can play with Pogba sort of to the left of him, or then you've got Alexander Lacazette. He's going to be the talk of the summer. Won't he move? For me, Deschamps has a problem. He's got players like Johan Cabaye, who has basically hardly played, and even when he has played for PSG, he's been poor. But he will not be taken out straight away because of the role he plays in the whole philosophy. But he should not be in that team. You've got like Maxime Gonalon for Lyon, Lacazette, Nabil Fekir from Lyon, who's superb. Paul George Ntep came on for his debut at the Stade de France and got, we'll say, an assist in quotation marks. It's a bit fortuitous, but he was involved. And Dimitri Payet, after his best season for Marseille, is trying to find. They've got a lot of really good players. Just a lot of them seem to be in the same position, and then that's going to give Deschamps a massive headache. I think he's persisting with a sort of three up front with sort of Valbuena floats, and I don't think he gets the best out of Antoine Griezmann. I don't think he gets the best out of Lacazette. Whether he has to now take the Belgian defeat and say, right, we need at least a plan B. We don't have to change the philosophy straight away, but we need to work on something that we can alternate to, or if not, go with going into the tournament, because it's not quite working, I think, as well as he'd hoped. And the players he has, I think, would play better. Maybe with two up front in a diamond midfield, something like that would possibly be worth trying. And if I was Deschamps, that's the way I'd be looking at it. But he's the man getting paid the big money.
A regular listener, Vince in Toronto, wants to know from you, Andrew, if outside of Karim Benzema, is Generation 1987 looked at as a failure in France?
In some ways, I mean, some people quite don't want to criticise Benzema. I know myself and some of the guys at FFW have been, because you watch Real Madrid and you watch him play and you think, yeah, he should be in the French team. Then you watch for France and you think, yeah, he should be nowhere near the French team. It's just, and it's one of those, it's hard to drop him when he's playing so well for his club, but then you know what's going to come when he plays for France. And that whole generation with Nasri and Hatem Ben Arfa, who's just there signed from Nice, it didn't do what it was expected to do. And I think now they're trying to get away from bigging up. It's so hard not to big up Pogba for what he does, but that sort of next generation, Lacazette and Fekir, all those, it's hard not to get carried away again. But I think they're playing it a little bit more cooler than they did with those guys.
Let's turn to Ligue 1, because this is interesting news that's very recent. The French Football League has decided to drop one of the three relegation places and move to only two of them. Starting, I believe this is starting next season. The Administrative Council voted 13-1 with 7 abstentions. The president said 3 up, 3 down is too many. Investors need a little more security. This is not surprising in the slightest to me, Andrew. But I mean, it only is because somebody finally did it. But in terms of the way football has been moving, this is not a surprise.
It's not, because money conquers all, doesn't it? That's the biggest thing. And France needs people to invest in those teams. And when you have, especially in Ligue 1, I think with Ligue 1, what makes it even more important is there's so many teams into the season can always go down. I remember the year that Monaco went down, they could have finished 12th on the final day and got relegated. And imagine if you're looking at what teams should invest in. What about them? They're 4 teams. No, they can still go down on the final day. Let's not bother with that. And they need. It's a move. I think fans, you want that drama the final day. You want 3 teams that can go down. It's always given us a really, really interesting relegation battle. With 2, that might not be the case. 2 teams could get cast aside, especially in a 20-team division. But I can see where Therese is coming from. They want people to put money into the game in the league. But then the problem is it's going to deter people putting money into League 2 teams, because it's going to make it so much harder. It's a very hard league to get out of as it is. And look at Lens and Nantes, they really struggle to get back. Auxerre are struggling there. They not long ago were in the Champions League. So you're sort of deterring investors from League 2 but you're trying I suppose you're trying to welcome them into League One. And I suppose the proof will be in the pudding, so to speak. If people do invest in the next 3-4 years, then it's worked. If not, what's really the point?
What's the relative strength of Ligue 2 to say, to Bundesliga or the Championship? Because I'm not sure that people really have a grasp on where second division football in France stands in relation to the rest of the continent. And then obviously because that feeds into how strong those clubs will be when they make that move up to Ligue 1.
Yeah, you just have to look at the teams that have come up recently. Nantes came up and they've had like a transfer embargo, and they're still sort of mid-table to sort of bottom side of it. They, at one point, I think it was December, they had the best defensive record in the league. Teams come up now and they don't always go straight back down. They stay up in Ligue 1. What that says about the rest of Ligue 1, it's not that far away from Ligue 2. It doesn't touch the English Championship. I don't think many second divisions do with the money involved there. Mm-hmm. But to everything else, I think Bundesliga is up there, the Bundesliga 2. It's just you can see when teams come up, they're not automatically favourites to go down. You always think there's a few teams that if they make the right signings and they're well organised, and that's what France gives you. No matter who you are, they can play football, they can pass out from the back, they can defend well, and that's what gives them a chance to stay up. So, it's going to make them, I suppose you're going to have to be a very strong team to get up now. You get a good chance of staying up, but whether there's going to be the same money to invest to make them strong, there's very small money as it is, but
right.
There's a lot of talent in Ligue 2. You'll see Troyes are going to do really well. I think in Ligue 1 they play a really nice brand of football under Jean-Marc Foulon. In Angers, they've got exciting players if they can keep them. There's definitely talent there. It's definitely a good league. It's unpredictable at best, which is always good. And it's a strong league. It's not one of the best, but it's definitely out there.
Sean on Twitter suggested this isn't something for the fans, that the fans are being they don't matter in this decision. Is there any reaction in France from the fans? I mean, obviously, if you're a Ligue 2, as you said, this may inhibit investment in Ligue 2 sides, but it also may upset fans who are of Ligue 2 sides who imagine that promotion could come, and now you've taken away a position.
Yeah, it shuts the door a little bit, doesn't it? So it gives you the dream of promotion, because in Ligue 2, even the end of this season, there was like 5-6 teams could still go up, and you're really reducing that if anyone breaks away. And there has been, I think some people can see the bigger picture, but fans are kind of, the Ligue 2 side, I think Ligue 1 side, fans are like, we might not go down next year now, there's a better chance of staying up, so they're not as unhappy. But I think it's more further down that's going to have a bit of an impact. And I mean, the League 2 attendances aren't great anyway, so it's a bit maybe more Twitter outrage than anything else.
Here's a question for you, because we've seen in Mexico, which now this is they do an Apertura Clausura system, so maybe it's a little different. But in Mexico, in Argentina, the way that they've protected the big clubs from going down, or the people who have invested in clubs who maybe threatened with relegation, is to do that rolling average and have a relegation based on a bunch of math. Andrew, was there any consideration at all for that kind of system, or is it always going to be remove one place?
I've never seen anything like that mentioned at all. I know Argentina do it as well, and it always baffles me when you see so-and-so over 6 years have done this. And I think that's a bit too. I don't think Europe would ever take that on. I don't think, unless some like PSG had an awful season, then you might see it come in.
Well, I mean, that's what's fascinating about it. I mean, in Mexico, as recently as 6 months ago, Chivas de Guadalajara, the biggest club in Mexico, if not the second biggest, was threatened with relegation based on their average. And ultimately, they stayed up. But we all imagine, and it's partly because it's Mexico and the owners have undue influence on the operation there, but we all imagine that they would find some way to keep Chivas up if they ended up going down, or if they were threatened. There'd be some sort of machinations to keep them up. If PSG or Lyon or Marseille or anybody that's big enough was in one of those positions, I mean, France would just let it happen. I mean, that's the way it should be. But would there be any pressure to try to figure out a way?
Yeah, I don't think they would change the rules to keep them up. What you could possibly see, which is easily done, is the DNCG, who sort of controls all the finances, would possibly find a way to relegate someone else due to money reasons, and therefore someone else.
Yes.
That's
this is what I'm just saying. This is the cynical side of things. And
Yeah, well, there's a lot of my good friend Jeremy, who's a Mets fan, hates loans because they stole the title off them in the 90s. Loans were allowed to stay in League One, even though they couldn't sort of prove that they could financially keep themselves going, which they did through the season. So it kind of was the right decision. But then the team that losing that, who won promotion to League Two, weren't allowed the chance to play through the season. And Lawns are seen as one of the big teams because they fill out their stadium and have the reputation. And so there is already, people can see, well, they were given, both two teams with the same situation were not given the same fair advantages, same playing field. So that is, to me, the kind of thing that would happen. They'd find some discrepancy in whoever was not relegated, whoever finished 17th, for, but yeah, you missed out this payment, so you can go down, and PSG would stay up.
The politics are obviously a factor here. Now, in that same general area, Andrew, before I let you go, what's the consideration in France for the fact that these clubs, especially these the smaller clubs, they have to spend to be competitive and to stay up, and yet that's going to put them in jeopardy of financial rules, of debt, having too out of a debt load and not being able to pay it back. How is France addressing some of those issues when money is going to continue to be consolidated at the top of all of these big European leagues?
I think the emphasis always has been, and I think always will be, is one of the reasons why French Weekly exists, is through the sort of promotion of youth. You're meant to follow Leon's template of bringing through your own players, selling them on. That's what keeps you afloat. You look at my team, Lille, we're selling Eden Hazard and Gervinho, and this is what keeps you going. Last year it was Divock Origi. That's what balances the books, and that is basically what's going to continue to happen. Loans have stayed afloat through selling players, and they will again sell this summer. So it's not about getting money from outside of it. It's basically creating your own money through bringing through youth players. And because they can't buy players, they have no choice. And that's what Nantes have done. Jordan Veretout, who's on sort of fringes of the France squad, he's come through and looks a great player. And other players who maybe wouldn't get a game if they could have signed some players have come through and done really well. This is how Ligue 1 will continue to exist. And in a way thrive, because you'll see all these great young players coming through, but it's more out of a lack of resources than choice, unfortunately.
Andrew Gibney from FrenchFootballWeekly.com, a fantastic website covering all things French football. A good discussion, Andrew. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Fantastic having you. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll open up the phone lines and talk to you about a couple of different topics. Don't go anywhere. Soccer Morning, WorldSoccerTalk.com. This Friday, the U.S. women's team plays Sweden in a game that'll be televised live on free-to-air U.S. television in prime time. It'll arguably be the most competitive game from the first round of the tournament, and I'll be sharing my thoughts and opinions about the clash live on Rabble.tv. You can join in too by posting your questions or observations in the comments section. Plus, I'll be talking you through the game as we watch two of the best teams in the world compete on the field. With Rabble.tv, the concept is simple. All you have to do is tune into the broadcast on TV, press the mute button, and then head over to Rabble.tv to listen to me sharing my analysis. And if you have an iPhone, install the Rabble TV app today and add a comment to the broadcast message board. Then listen live via the app on Friday. So mark your calendars for Friday, June 12th at 7:45 Eastern. Celebrate the U.S. game against Sweden by cheering on the red, white, and blue with me live on Rabble.tv.
Hope Solo, Coach Jill Ellis, and President Sunil Gulati are representing this country, you and me. And clearly, none of them is qualified to do so. Certainly not now. Solo deserves immediate suspension with all rights of appeal. Ms. Ellis and Mr. Gulati, however, who have shown this condescending attitude of sports first, reality second, protect the bubble at all times, and have been the worst possible role models for and the worst possible representatives of this country, should be immediately dismissed.
Keith Olbermann throwing fire on ESPN over the Hope Solo situation. I play that for a couple of reasons, not necessarily because I agree with Keith Olbermann that Hope Solo should be suspended, that Ellis and Gulati should be dismissed. That is a big thing to suggest. And I'm not sure I'm there, and I have some issues with the way that Keith Olbermann portrayed this incident involving Hope Solo as quote-unquote domestic violence. Does it fall under that heading? I imagine that it probably does. Does it deserve to be thrown up alongside the issue of Ray Rice in the NFL? I don't think it does. But that's not why I play it. I play it because I wonder, based on Olbermann's reaction, and based on some of the other pieces that I'm seeing, he's not the only one out there commenting in the aftermath of the first U.S. game in which Hope Solo was praised for her performance. He's not the only one suggesting that maybe we glossed over this a little too much. That maybe we gave Hope Solo a pass that she does not deserve. That's what I'm curious about. If you believe that Hope Solo got a pass, if you believe that U.S. Soccer failed in their mission when it comes to Hope Solo. Keith Olbermann certainly does. Now, he is the type of individual who would stand up and call for the resignation of somebody because they failed in their, whatever. He believes they failed in their job. He's calling for heads. I'm not sure I'm there. But the question does need to be asked whether we've zoomed past that too much. And this is a soccer show, and we want to talk about soccer. We want to talk about the U.S. women playing a game and beating Australia 3-1 and the saves and the goals. Maybe that's just our instinct. That's why we move past. But if this deserves to get more attention, we should give it more attention. Certainly, U.S. soccer doesn't look good right now. Certainly, in light of the half-sisters' statements that Hope Solo was lying on Good Morning America, that she wasn't the victim, that she attacked her son, et cetera, and that U.S. soccer did not follow up on all of this, makes U.S. soccer look bad. I don't think there's an argument about that. But then we come to a question of how much responsibility does U.S. soccer have in this situation? Now, and one of Olbermann's biggest pieces of one of the things he had most issue with was that Hope Solo said the case has been dismissed, when in fact the case was originally dismissed on a procedural technicality, not because they threw out the charges for lack of evidence, and that the prosecutors are going back in to court to attempt to revive the case because they do believe they have evidence. Mike in Philly, what's up?
Hey, Jason. The whole Hope Solo thing, they definitely handled it wrong. I got to say that. That being said, I don't know really what they should have done.
It's difficult, isn't it? I mean, it's really difficult. It's a he said, she said situation. There's no video. Nobody has any hard evidence of what went down. Hope Solo says one thing. The half sister and the nephew say another thing. Her behavior I don't know that her behavior at the police station is germane to any suspension. That's not the crime. If she was abusive to police officers, that means she's a jerk. It doesn't mean she should be suspended.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it, though. She's a jerk. I mean, let's face it, not only because of this, but for various other things. Hope Solo's sort of a scumbag. I hate to say that, but, I mean, she is. Great player. Love that she's on our team, but, I mean, not exactly a role model. At the very least, I'm thinking they probably should have pulled back more so on Hope Solo in the promotional material than anything else. as far as actually suspending her, like you said, it's he said, she said, or she said, whatever it is in this case. But it's just, man, it's a tough situation. Yeah. But I just wish they pulled the reins back a little bit on, I guess, using her as a flagship player on the team.
It comes down
to so many other great personalities.
There is that, Mike. There is also the question of whether or not there's some sort of double standard at work here, and I think it's difficult for me to stand up and declare that there is one. Sean on Twitter says a man committing domestic violence against a woman would have been suspended. Hope Solo should have been suspended too. Again, I'm not sure it's clear that she committed, blah, 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 blah. Who said what? Who did what? Everybody's drunk. The other thing here is, again, I'm uncomfortable with equating this to the type of domestic violence that we see typically happen with an NFL player, for example, where a player is arrested or indicted or is accused of domestic assault against a loved one, against a wife, against a girlfriend. If there was this may have just been a fight. I'm not declaring Hope Solo innocent, and I'm not washing away her sins here. But if this is just a fight that got out of hand at a party, then she may have committed a crime, but I don't know if I'm ready to slap the tag domestic violence on it, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not like we have video evidence the way there was for Ray Rice. And, I mean, there's a lot more up in the air as to what actually went down. At least as far as I know, I haven't been following it as closely as you have, I'm sure. But,
well, that is where we're at, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I think. I mean, at the end of the day, I just wish there wasn't as much, and I guess it's tough with her being arguably the best goalie in the world, but I just wish there wasn't as much focus on her because she's not a good role model one way or the other.
I will say this. If we're going to talk about double standards, there have been plenty of times, and I know the NFL has cracked down in light of really bad publicity, and they did the right thing eventually, in some of these cases, especially Ray Rice. But I will say that if we're talking about double standards and equality of treatment, Hope Solo, as the star player on a team that needs her services to be successful, is getting the same type of treatment we've long seen male athletes get. Let's just forget about that bad thing he did, because if we don't have him on the field or the court, we're going to lose the game. That has been happening for years and years and years, and that seems to be the case with Hope Solo. She's getting a pass because she's really good. That's something that men have been dealing with. Men have been getting that kind of treatment for years. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying if we're talking about equality of treatment. All right. We don't have to talk about Hope Solo here. 646-832-3909. We can push that aside. I just felt like sharing Oberman specifically because, again, it's a very fiery statement to make. And part of it is the beginning of it. The part of it is they represent us. Now, I think he's using that in a very demagogic sort of way to rile up those of us or the portions of his audience that may not care so much about the soccer team or care so much about how they do at the World Cup, but certainly do care about being American and being represented as an American. I think that's maybe a little unfair on his part, but his sentiment, as bombastic as it is, does bring up several difficult questions. Vincent Toronto says Solo is a black eye on U.S. soccer, tells the world U.S. soccer turns their head at these situations if the player is talented. I can't argue with that perception. I certainly can't. Come back to something I said at the top of the show when I did the news. As USA gets ready to play Germany, that game is at 2:45 Eastern today. And I'll be watching closely for any developments from the United States after that big win against the Netherlands. It was a difficult game in Holland to assess properly. But now we have another opportunity to see how the United States plays against top-level competition. And again, here's the quote from Yogi Love. I watched the Netherlands-USA game. I have to say I was highly impressed by the sheer speed, the intensity, and the strength of character that the U.S. national team showed. Also, tactically, they played at a high level. From purely a footballing quality point of view, I think the game against Netherlands was fantastic to watch. The team has come on in leaps and bounds, even at the World Cup in Brazil. They left Portugal behind them. They left Ghana behind them. They exited from the World Cup in extra time. Tactically speaking, I think the United States national team were at a very high level. They showed an incredible intensity and dynamism on the pitch. Is that Yogi Love blowing smoke at Jurgen Klinsmann, or do you think this is true? Do you think he believes it? Is that where we are now? Has Jurgen Klinsmann actually advanced the U.S. program to a point where all of this is accurate? The cynical side of me wants to go, well, just because no longer work together doesn't mean they're not boys and close, and I think they probably are fairly close. I think they do have mutual respect for one another, whatever the situation with Love and tactics and Germany in 2006, and the criticisms against Klinsmann in 2010, 9 and 10 with Bayern Munich. Whatever those criticisms, I still think Yogi Love's the type of guy, he's not going to go ripping Jurgen Klinsmann. He's going to do the polite thing, welcoming Klinsmann back into Germany, welcoming his team. And he has an excuse here to blow some smoke because they beat the Netherlands on Friday, 4-3. I don't see what Yogi sees. Now, Yogi is by far and away a better soccer mind than I will ever be. Yogi Love has forgotten more tactics than I will ever know. And yet I'm questioning him. I feel weird doing that. Should I not question Yogi Love? I don't know. Trevor, you believe that he's blowing smoke, or these are legitimate comments? Hashtag hater. Hashtag hater. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair at all. 646-832-3909. Talk about Hope Solo. You can talk about these comments, certainly. Or you can talk about Adrian Heath, head coach, Orlando City Soccer Club, who said on his radio show that Dom Dwyer, striker for Sporting Kansas City, and former Orlando City player on loan in the USL level a couple of years back, wants to be in Orlando. That's where he wants to be. And that Orlando has tried several times to come up with a way to get Dom Dwyer back to Orlando. Here's your quote. "There is no secret that Dom wants to be here. We have tried to bring him here. We have done everything we can. Unfortunately, we can't do it yet. But we will keep trying. I think this is his spiritual home. He wants to come back. We would love to have him. But we'll have to wait and see how long it takes before he can do it." Now, I don't know if that's true. Maybe Dom Dwyer loves Orlando. He certainly loved it when he was there the first time. It helped him get the job, the regular job in Kansas City. It helped him convince Peter Vermees that he deserved to be a lead striker in this league. But is this tampering? And further, can you have tampering in MLS where all the contracts are centrally controlled? Is that not a thing in MLS? I don't know if I've ever... I can't recall a situation where a coach was accused of tampering or tapping up, as the English like to say. Is this a thing? Somebody educate me. I've been watching MLS for a long time, and I honestly don't know. This is the first time it's ever dawned on me whether or not there's tampering in MLS. Let's talk to Jason in Jersey. What's on your mind, Jason?
Hey, Mr. Davis. Good morning. I heard your interview on World Soccer Radio, which was very good. And I'm about the same age as you, by the way. And one point you mentioned in the interview, which I thought was interesting, is how you said you lost interest in playing soccer once you got to a certain age. And that's very common in youth sports today, where someone plays soccer when they're a kid and they stop, and all of a sudden they go to high school and play gridiron football.
Yep.
But I wonder if kids today won't do what you did, or I did, because I stopped playing youth soccer after 8, 9 years old as well, because they're more aware of the professional leagues around the world in MLS now.
Yeah.
And also the fact that gridiron football, you hear all this stuff about concussions, and parents maybe might not want their kids to play football anymore.
I do think there's a couple of things that are true about what you just said. By the way, what Jason's talking about is I did do a lengthy interview with Nate Abaria on World Soccer Radio yesterday afternoon. You can find that episode. Go to World Soccer Talk. You'll find the episode. It's Nate's asking me a lot of questions about my background and et cetera. And yes, I think that the lack of a professional league and the role models that provides, and not role models, heroes maybe, and certainly the ability to imagine myself as a professional player, that had a major impact on whether I played soccer. Absolutely, it did. And I also think that you're right. I think that parents probably will push their kids more towards soccer in light of some of the football issues. I have a 7-year-old son. I played football from the age of 12 until 18. I don't want my kid playing football. I don't. And I'm going to try everything I can to keep him from doing so. Now, if he begs me and begs me and begs me, and that's what his dream is, it's going to be hard for me to stop him. I don't want to stop him from doing something he wants to do. But if I have any control at all, I will push him to sports that don't involve let's slam our heads together. Now, soccer has its own concussion issues, and I will be very cognizant of that, but certainly it's a different level. You got anything else, Jason?
Great feedback. Thank you very much.
All right, there goes Jason in Jersey. Appreciate that. Yeah, again, go check out that World Soccer Radio interview that I did with Nate. It's good stuff. Had a good time talking to him. Talking about this show, the growth of this show, my background and everything else. Austin in Virginia, what's going on, man?
Hey, what's up, man? I wanted to answer your question about Yogi Love's comments about whether he's a blowing smoke or if he's legit.
Yeah.
I feel like it's got to be half and half because obviously he's probably still cool with Klinsmann, but to him, who doesn't have the United States national team under the microscope like we do, you got to think that he sees the substitutes and he sees the starting lineup and he thinks, oh, well, obviously, Klinsmann's tactics are, paying off.
Yeah.
But for us, when we see it under the microscope, it's completely different.
I think, maybe we're a little too close to the situation, and this is why I don't want to dismiss his comments out of hand. Is number one, he's a great tactical mind. He's clearly done great things with Germany, and second, because sometimes that removed perspective does give you, it does make things stand out that for you and me, or anybody else who's closely watching this team every single match, maybe we miss. Maybe we don't see the development of the tactics in the same way. It's sort of like, when you have a kid and you live with them and see them every day, you don't really notice how they're growing. And somebody who hasn't seen them in a year will say, wow, you got tall, that kind of thing. That's what that's very possible for Yogi Love.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks for taking my call, man.
Appreciate it. There goes Austin. 646-832-3909. I'm going to read this comment thread from Steven on Twitter, Steven_MC19. Thanks for the comment, Steven. Women's soccer is still conveyed in this Rosie the Riveter stage where women have to be inspirational models. Hope Solo's incident would cast a blemish on the, quote, achieving over adversity, unquote, reputation trying to be upheld. As such, and because she's so crucial for the team, the incident is being swept under the rug as much as possible. Winning in the spotlight is more valuable to campaigns aiming towards little girls than off-the-field issues. There may be some truth in that, Stephen. There may be. The elements that follow the U.S. women's team and women professional soccer players in general are very different than those that are attached to male athletes, from both good and bad. There's a spotlight on a woman, on a female athlete, and a requirement that they are a role model that does not necessarily apply to male athletes. We let male athletes slide on the role model thing all the time. Now, some of them are, and then we identify them as role models, and we go, oh, that's somebody I want my kid to emulate. But for the most part, they're allowed to do their job and be excellent at their job, and whatever happens off the field, as long as it doesn't endanger lives or require them to go to jail, is sort of pushed to the side. Women don't really have that luxury, and as a female athlete, there is an additional requirement, or at least a pressure, to be visible in ways that male athletes don't have to be. Okay? I'm just going to say that. I mean, these women are making their decisions and seeing and deciding what's best for their careers, and that's absolutely their right. But you're not going to see male athletes have to go and do some of the things that female athletes have to do in order to make the most out of their careers. And with Hope Solo, I would imagine that part of her response to all of this is something along those lines. Is that, her life is her life. She shouldn't have to be under a microscope for elements of it that don't matter to her performance on the field. You'll hear athletes all the time say, all that matters is how I play. All I want to do is go out and play the game and stop answering questions about off the field issues. So how much of that plays into how Keith Olbermann views U.S. Soccer's response? How much of that, even if he imagines himself unbiased, even if he imagines himself treating both the men's team and the women's team equally, and if there was a man who was going through the same situation, he would call for the same action. I think that the perception of the women's team, how we view them, and that wholesome image that they're required to maintain, let's be honest, they have a higher requirement to be wholesome than the men's team does. That impacts how we think about this situation, how we think about Hope Solo, and how we think about the reaction. 646-832-3909. Is our friend from West Virginia trying to call again? I think is that what that is? Or something else? I don't know what's going on over here. All right. Talking about Hope Solo, Yogi Love's comments on the U.S. development ahead of USA Germany today. What do you expect out of that game, by the way? What do you want to see the U.S. do against Germany? Naveed says the U.S. player pool is better. Jurgen has not progressed the immediate U.S. men's national team. His coaching is average, but his scouting is world class. Okay. I don't know that. I don't know if I'm going to put that all at his feet. But look, if I'm going to blame Jurgen Klinsmann for some things, then I have to give him credit for other things. He absolutely is ultimately in charge of the program. The buck stops at Jurgen Klinsmann. So, and it's not even begrudging respect. I give him full marks for the way that he has changed the mentality of the national team when they go to Europe. Because it wasn't that long ago that they never, ever got a result in Europe. It used to be that they couldn't play on European soil for some reason. It just went out, it just disappeared. And now they have, I don't have those stats in front of me. I've seen Paul Carr on from ESPN put that on several times, most recently after the win over the Netherlands, obviously. And the record under Jurgen Klinsmann in Europe is already like 300% better than the record under everybody else before him. Let's go to Jeff in Orlando. What's up, Jeff?
Jason, how are you? What's going
on? Talking about soccer, Jeff. You want to join me?
Sure. So you caught my ear with the kids playing soccer. I went through the same thing when I was young, and ended up switching not to football but primarily to baseball.
Mm-hmm. I play baseball too. Yeah.
And baseball, basketball. So I think the difference now that I can tell is the ability to see the stars.
Yep.
When I was growing up, I had no way to see the English leagues or the Spanish leagues or whatever. And with DirecTV, my 8-year-old son can see Messi, Ronaldo, Rooney, all these players that give him something to aspire to that I just didn't have when I was when I was young.
It's definitely that. Okay. And I was a sports obsessed kid. I watched everything I could find. I watched Baseball Tonight over and over and over again. I watched all the college football that was on Saturday. Didn't matter who was playing. Loved it all. I watched it. I watched Thursday night games. I mean, I was all about watching sports, and I don't recall during my formative soccer years seeing any soccer on television. I don't recall seeing anything. I remember, being at practice with my team and loving playing. And the only player I really knew of was Pele. And there was and obviously he was retired by then. And we had the best player on our team was kind of he was the star. He was the one who knew more than the rest of us. His dad was a soccer guy and had imparted some knowledge on him, maybe even gotten him like videos or some way gotten him exposed to soccer. And I remember that being a big deal. And I also, and that it occurs to me that the parental connection is so massive there. My dad may not be the biggest football fan in the world, and he played baseball and may not follow it day to day, but he certainly enjoyed those sports and passed that down to me. My grandfather was a major influence on me, and neither of them liked soccer or cared about soccer. Here's the difference. Now, not only can you see all the soccer you want to get your hands on, but your dad's probably telling you about it. You know what I mean? I think that's a big deal.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I watch it. It's so convenient for me to watch soccer these days. I've got 2 kids, and I can watch the English games and be done by noon.
Yeah.
So on Saturday and Sunday mornings, we watch the English games and some of the Spanish stuff, and we're done by noon, and we have the rest of our days. Whereas I'm a huge football fan too, but if I got to go out and do stuff during the day with the kids, I got to do it. But when I was a kid growing up, I agree. There was no. I couldn't name you a bunch of players like I could now in terms of the stars of the game. And the professional league too makes a big difference. When I was a kid, I used to go watch the Fort Lauderdale Strikers. And I remember the very late days of the NASL with the Cosmos and stuff like that. But that stuff, it just didn't exist. No professional league, all that stuff. I think MLS is going to play a huge role in growing soccer in America going forward. We need to have some players here in this country that kids can aspire to. But even if we don't, and they have to get their stars from TV, having access to Messi and Ronaldo and all those guys will make a big difference.
I believe so. Thanks for the call. I appreciate it, Jeff.
Thanks, Jason.
Here goes Jeff in Orlando. The point is a very good one. And that period is still set. I'm 35 years old. That period between 84 when the NASL folded and 1996 when MLS started was a barren wasteland for a lot of us, especially kids growing up trying to care about soccer at all. Pablo in D.C., what's up?
How's it going, Jason?
It's going well, my friend. What's on your mind?
Hey, first of all, I know it's random, but happy World Day against child labor. I really hope Qatar does not get the World Cup because of their use of force and child labor and construction of their stadium. So I hope that ends and we get it back.
Okay, fair enough.
I was going to say very quickly, great times to be, or interesting times to be U.S. fan. What happened this morning with the U.S. beating Netherlands. I know, I'm reserving my judgment till the end of the Gold Cup because that's when I'm going to be able to, I think, better analyze and critique the U.S. team and Klinsmann, what happened during the Gold Cup. But I'm going to say, I know you're going to disagree with me, but among kind of the soccer analysts context that you kind of regularly talk with in the show, I get that there's kind of an anti-Klinsmann feeling going on. There's all this criticism going on, sometimes really good one. Sometimes I believe that it just ends up showing kind of the bias in a lot of the analysts. And I think, we have to see there's a lot of stuff that he hasn't delivered on for sure, but there's also positive things like you're pointing out. And sure. I was going to say, I don't know if you remember this ESPN contributor on ESPN-FC, I guess his name is Raphael Honigstein, I think. Mm-hmm. And before the World Cup, he was very critical of Germany, very, very critical of saying that they were not going to win because he was really into the weeds. And at the end of the World Cup, they asked him, so what do you think? Why would you have the point of view? And he said, at the end, it's because I get into the nitty-gritty. I see the horrible, some bad things going on in the German soccer world. And I think it makes it a big deal. And that losing kind of side of the big, the forest or the trees. Yeah. And I think that sometimes happens with a lot of the analysts in UN soccer. We get into the weeds, which is fine. We need that. But sometimes we need to step back, see the bigger picture, and understand that development in soccer is not something that happens overnight, especially when you have the same players, or the majority of the same players from World Cup to another. It takes a long time, and you have to be patient. You have to experiment. And, we just sometimes, I think, lose track of that and want progress right away. Right. And I appreciate you bring both sides of the arguments here, but sometimes it's just like I think it gets too anti-Klinsmann for my view. And not that I'm a big Klinsmann fan, but I'm just throwing out there.
Okay, look, obviously if it crosses, thanks for the call, Pablo. If it crosses the threshold between, if it goes beyond legitimate criticism and just goes into dislike for dislike's sake, then that's where we lose the thread. Now, the thing about Klinsmann, I'll say, and before I get to Landon here, is that part of Klinsmann's issue with the analysts and the journalists who cover him is that he doesn't. He talks a lot without saying anything. He talks a lot and then goes back on those comments. That's a good way to frustrate an analyst, is to not follow through on your statements. Now, if you could just sort of chalk it up to Jurgen Klinsmann is a talker. He's gonna do stuff and don't believe him at all, and that's just who he is, quirky guy. Then maybe you can get beyond that. And I do think sometimes we lose perspective, but I also don't think that it would be right to ease up on Klinsmann just because, oh my gosh, it sounds like you guys are anti-Klinsmann. It needs to be legitimate, fair, objective criticism. That's hard sometimes, but it needs to be attempted. Landon in Salt Lake, what's up?
Hey, Jason. Yeah, first off, I want to agree with you what you're saying about keeping your son out of football if you can. So I actually grew up in Leesburg and actually grew up playing football over there. Not a great thing. So I'm just telling you right now, I recommend Leesburg is not a good area for playing football. I think that whole area in Virginia in general is just not a great thing.
Well, so Ashburn is not on the list of good soccer locales. Is that what you're telling me? What's going on?
Oh, yeah, soccer. So I grew up Leesburg, Percival. I played soccer. I played football.
Oh, you mean
soccer
football?
Is much better in that area.
I see what you're saying.
Recommend that for you.
We're getting our terminology mixed up here. You're talking about actual football. Yes. Okay. Fine. I won't. We're not going to even do that. You know what? And even if he does end up playing, the kid's going to be 14 probably before I even consider it. So let's. I got 7 years to think about it, Landon. What else is on your mind?
Anyway, so I'm calling about that, though, about kind of parenting and how these athletes are viewed on the big stage, and it really frustrates me when I hear athletes say the only thing that should matter is my performance on the field, because if the athlete was just paid solely on that performance, that I can maybe understand that, but with all the advertising contracts that they do and all the merchandise that they sell, I mean, would you be comfortable with your 7-year-old wearing a Ray Rice jersey?
No, not at all.
No whatsoever. And that's very frustrating because these athletes are getting paid for that. And so they know that a good portion of, especially the big name athletes, a good portion of the money they make per year is not their salary, it's these advertising contracts. And they're played to certain demographics, and a lot of that demographics are youth. And they think they can get away with acting however they want, and it's fine because I'm just a football player or soccer or anything in this case. So hearing that is just very, very frustrating because we obviously know that's not the case.
No, sure.
And so going to the Hope Solo thing, it's frustrating to see that soccer is starting to take off, and to see it being tainted by getting tainted by this is rough. But I mean, I kind of agree with all the callers. I think that it's definitely getting downplayed for a multitude of reasons, especially the whole women's domestic violence. That's a big political issue, and I agree. If it was a man doing this, it would have gotten much more attention in the media. But here's kind of to play a little bit devil's advocate here, want to see what you think on this. Is it maybe even a little good thing that we're getting this media attention? Because if it's I keep hearing that no one cares about soccer. If that was the case, this really wouldn't be that big of a deal. If no one really cared about soccer, this would have been taken care of and no one would have said anything.
Well, okay. I think there's a couple of things here that demand mention in that area. It is soccer, but we know that typically women's sports get secondary consideration. So I think that some of this is about the celebrity of Hope Solo. I think some of this is about the image of that national team. And some of the people, the women on that team and the reasons why they're famous. I'm trying to be, I'm trying to dance around some things here, Landon, but I don't know that this is entirely about soccer. I wish it was. I really, really do wish this was just about soccer, but I don't think it is. And that's part of the reason it bothers me.
Yeah, I get that. I say it's not 100% about soccer, but I still think it says a lot about the sport and its growth. I mean, if there was a domestic abuse case against the lead of the women's curling team in the U.S., that would not be getting near the celebrity status. And even if it wasn't, I mean, Hope So is obviously famous for a few reasons, but let's say it was, someone else on the team, Sidney Leroux, Abby Wambach. If it was the same case for another sport that really isn't that big, it wouldn't be getting as much attention. So it's just something to think about. That it's terrible this whole thing's going down, but at least it shows something that soccer's getting big enough that it actually is getting this media attention.
Yeah, it's a difficult question. Thanks for the call, Landon. Whether or not this is any PR is good PR in just in terms of getting it attention, getting it out there. Certainly, this is a difficult learning experience that we're going through, and you have to imagine that at some point you're going to have to go through this. Why not have it happen now? Why not deal with it now? Deal with the differences in some of the double standards and the biases that are at play. Certainly deal with people like Keith Olbermann commenting on it and calling for the heads of Sunil Gulati, Jill Ellis, calling for Hope Solo to be suspended. I mean, I think some people want to paint this as, well, we can't have a double standard if we're going to call for Ray Rice to never play football again, or for Roger Goodell to lose his job over the original handling of the Ray Rice situation. But sometimes I think you overcorrect. And there are significant differences here that make me uncomfortable with these statements that Olbermann made, for example. It doesn't mean that U.S. Soccer hasn't screwed this up, and it doesn't mean that Jill Ellis and Sunil Gulati and everybody else involved doesn't deserve criticism. It's just whether or not we reach that level. All right, we're going to wrap up this web edition of Soccer Morning. Thank you very much for listening on a Wednesday. Thank you to Andrew Gibney, who was fantastic, talking about French football, both men and women's. He's covering the Women's World Cup for Bleacher Report, so go check him out and also check out French Football Weekly. All right, that's it. We're good. Backheel.com/store to buy yourself a mug. Go buy a t-shirt at 3nlfc.com. We got some other good t-shirts at the Backheel store as well. We'll take a 45-minute break and see you over on Sirius XM FC. Talk to you guys there. Bye.